Yo, what's up, guys? This Topics here. Some recent dungeon tuning came out, and I wanted to go over it because I think the impacts are actually quite large. And because my content is Mythic Plus focused, I figured that this would be a good short video. Um, so it's Ara-Kara and Halls that got nerfed, and I don't think that's a surprise. These two dungeons were a lot harder than people expected. Ara-Kara, which was the freest weekly key in Season 1, is suddenly not like that anymore. And Halls of Atonement, as well, was a free weekly key in Shadowlands, is also not like that. So I think they've, underperformed based on people's expectations. So anyways, first of all, I'm going to kind of go over um, what these mean and then kind of show you on route. So in Ara-Kara, the trailing attendants, which are the guys at the beginning, like the first pull mainly. There's also one on like the third mini boss. Their resonant barrage initial cooldown is increased, and ability cooldown increased by 50%. Periodic damage reduced by 12.5%. So they're gonna hit a little bit less hard. This is maybe like about a key level. But the biggest thing is that their ability cooldown is increased by 50%. So you're not going to have to kick or stun them as often. I wonder if this is going to result in pulling in an extra one on the first pull or not, because if the cooldown's increased by 50% and you don't have to send as many kicks or stops to stop these two guys, it might be quite manageable. But I guess that's TBD. I don't know if people will opt in to pull a third one still, just because the coordination will still be needed, just not as fast. This one's probably a little bit bigger in my opinion. Engorged Crawler, Venomous Spit ability cooldown increased by 40%. So they're basically going to be casting this almost twice less, 2 times less. So if you were only to pull 4 of these, you could probably definitely pull 7 or 8 now. I know a lot of people would like chain the Engorged Crawlers instead of pulling all of them, but I think you're just going to want to pull all of them right away. Or if you're pulling them for funnel into mini boss, that'll be fine too. Avanox, that's the first boss. Starved Crawler, health reduced by 20%. These are the ads. So the ads should die a little bit faster, which in turn will allow the group to get into like a stacked position sooner as well to drop the puddles. So I think this will make the first boss a lot easier. And Gossamer Onslaught, periodic damage reduced by 17%. So it wasn't the pulsing AoE that was hurting on this boss actually. It was the damage that you would take while you're dropping the puddles. That's been reduced by almost 2 key levels. And then this is the second boss, is just addressed like a bug where during the Eye of the Swarm, the rim visual wasn't quite accurate. But I wanted to talk about what that means. Let's pop this open here. Go to Ara-Kara. So in the first pull here, you have this attendant and this attendant, and often teams would just CC this one and not play them because you have this boss that you have to kick the fear and it just web bolts constantly, and then you have the trailing attendant that also web bolts and does a resonant barrage. This resonant barrage is like an AoE, right? If it's just sitting there casting this, it's pulsing AoE to the group every 2 seconds. So this has been nerfed, and it also, if you kick or stop this, it's not going to cast it nearly as much. But I still don't think, looking at this, that you'll pull this third one, because that means you still have 1, 2, 3 bolts to kick. Someone has to be assigned to the fear, so you already need 4 kicks, and then you would need to be running an AoE stop chain on these. So it might be doable, but like even if you throw all 4 kicks at these, you're not gonna be able to get every bolt, because then it's just gonna start casting bolts again. So then you need to send stops on some of the bolts. I don't think that you're still going to be pulling this, so that change is probably irrelevant. However, in this pull, when you have a bunch of engorged crawlers, you got 4 of them here, and then these 3 you probably wouldn't pull in right away, because then you'd have 7, and if you didn't have enough poisonous spells, some people could get double application here. But I think this pull will probably be fine now that they made that nerf. And then obviously first boss is easier. So what I think this is result in, I think first pull is pretty much gonna be the same. I think it's just the second pull and maybe these engorged crawlers in with this mini boss is less scary. That's about it. Do I think it's gonna make this a key level easier? Not really. I think it's probably just gonna minimize the amount of wipes you have in this first area, which is good. You never want your failure point of a dungeon to be at the beginning. That just doesn't feel good. So anyway, good changes. I think they could have done a little something to the last area. I also think they could have lowered the amount of trash required in this dungeon so that you don't have to pull so much in the end here or pull so much in these areas. But anyway, good change. Could be better though. The other change I want to talk about though, and these ones are massive. I couldn't believe this when I was reading this, to be honest with you. So Halls of Atonement, they literally address like the four. Okay, I want to say 4 out of the top 5 hardest things in here they probably addressed. The only thing they didn't address that I think is still reasonably hard is maybe like second, third boss, something there. But either way, reduce the number of depraved obliterators and depraved collectors near each shard of Halkias. So that's crazy because that was like one of the hardest parts of the dungeon were like the first 2-3 pulls, because you'd have just an insane amount of casters you'd have to stop or kick while trying to prioritize the Shroud of Halkias, because the AoE from that guy is crazy as well. And there's like magic debuffs going out. So that's awesome to see. I'm curious. It doesn't really say how much they've reduced it. I'm assuming they're only taking 1 away. It's like the first pull there was like 3 casters, is probably only 2, and the next pull there was 4. There's maybe only 3 there, so maybe they took 1 away from each, but I guess that's TBD. This next one, they reduced the density of the creatures in the courtyard before Echelon. Again, that's pretty vague, so we'll have to see what that looks like, but I think they're on the right track, because that courtyard had way too much trash, and there were just like patrols all over the place. They've also lowered the enemy forces required by 10%, which is great, because it just felt like you just needed so much trash in this dungeon before you even fought the second boss. And your back was definitely up against the timer in this dungeon. And then this one is great too. The Stoneborn Slasher enemy force value increased by 50%. So they didn't touch the mob, but they made it more worthwhile, which is good because they are all over the place. It would be nice if they were much more worth it, which I think they will be now. This is probably the biggest change. Now, obviously, you're probably going to change some of the pulls you're doing so you don't need as much trash, in addition to the fact that these are worth more count. So there's going to be definitely less pulls in here. But I think this is super impactful, guys. The fact they reduced casters by the shards, they reduced the density in the courtyard, reduced the amount of count you needed, and made the slashers more count. Those are like 4 of the top 5 hardest parts of this dungeon. I actually think this dungeon is probably like 4th easiest now. That is my initial guess. Like, I think that Ecodome, Gambit, and Streets are probably the easiest ones still, but I think this is probably next. Because if we look at MDT on the impact of that, you have this first pull that had 2 obliterators and a collector. I'm assuming they like are removing one of these obliterators and maybe putting a dog in there, or maybe just more groundskeepers or something. And this next pull literally had two collectors and 2 obliterators, which is ridiculous. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's this is a complete brick wall for pugs at a high enough key where it just wouldn't be possible. And I don't think Blizzard wants to go that direction where, because of the amount of coordination required, it's just impossible to do it in a pug. They want the walls to be damage, healing, tanking. They don't want your wall to be, oops, we accidentally put a gazillion casters in this mob. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's really good. And then again, right now, these slashers are 1.93%. If they're increasing their count by 50%, that means that they're going to be worth like 2.7%, which is really good, because that's like way more than anything in this dungeon. So I actually would not be surprised if, because there's less casters in this first pull, you might want to pull this. You might want to pull this one in here. You're probably definitely going to pull this one in here, and then you're probably going to pull 1 or 2 over here. But you're definitely going to need less count. Like, I'm trying to figure out what pull would go away here. I guess we'd have to see what the mob density in the middle looks like, but there's a chance that like you don't pull this patrol or this patrol anymore, and you maybe don't need these for funnel into the first boss, and maybe you skip a pull in this mid area. We'll have to see. But this dungeon is going to be significantly easier. So I just wanted to go over these changes, talk about their impact. Overall, good changes to Ara-Kara, not enough, but the changes to halls are literally going to take this from like maybe the 2nd hardest dungeon to like 4th easiest. So it's going to jump up a couple spots, and I think people will actually start to like this dungeon after this change, because because the open concept 3-boss dungeons people really like. It's just that there's some things in here that weren't the best, and I think they're going away. So I wouldn't be surprised if this starts becoming one of people's more favorite dungeons. Anyways, good luck out there keying. See you guys in the next one. Peace. Shout out to all the Patreon members. It's because of your support that I'm able to continue making Protection Warrior and World of Warcraft content. Thank you.